Welcome to Insights. I'm Adam Rivers.
And I'm Sarah Collins. In this episode, we'll reflect carefully on the Qur'an, verse by verse, focusing on wording, context, and coherence.
Yeah, and Insights is, it's fundamentally a journey of uncovering profound wisdom.
Exactly. It's about slowing down, really looking closely, and realizing that within Revelation, every single letter carries a whole universe of meaning.
Right.
So in our last episode, we explored the profound cycle of life and death, reflecting on the verse that asks how humanity can deny the Creator when we were brought to life from lifelessness.
Yeah, we basically established the who of our existence.
We did. And today we're looking at the magnificent stage that was built for that very existence.
Right, so we are turning to Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 29, and the translation of the verse reads, "It is He who created for you all of that which is on the earth. Then He directed Himself to the heaven and made them 7 heavens, and He is knowing of all things." So to start us off, I have a simple question. When you look at the world around you, from the soil beneath your feet to the stars above, do you see a random collision of matter or a deliberately prepared home?
That really is the defining question of human existence, isn't it?
It really is.
Because how you answer that, it doesn't just change your theology, it completely alters your psychology, your approach to science, and just how you walk through the world every single day.
Exactly.
But honestly, when faced with this vast cosmic picture painted by Revelation, a statement that stretches from the dirt to the highest heavens, it feels overwhelming.
Sure.
How should we even position our minds to begin unpacking something of this scale?
Well, think about it like this. What happens if you try to pour fresh, pure water into a glass that is already full of muddy water?
It just overflows. You just get a bigger mess of muddy water.
Right. You have to empty the glass first.
Okay.
Deep reflection requires stripping away all of our preconceived notions, our traditional frameworks and all that mental clutter we carry around.
So we have to start with a blank slate.
Exactly. We have to stand before these words, recognizing that every single linguistic structure is placed with flawless precision. And that actually begins with the very first word of the verse, the pronoun he.
Okay, I have to push back a little right at the start.
Go for it.
Just a simple pronoun, it feels like a grammatical necessity rather than, a profound philosophical statement. We use pronouns all day long without thinking twice.
Sure we do.
Is a pronoun really the foundation of this massive cosmic concept?
Well, why do you think a master builder places a cornerstone before laying a single brick?
Because it dictates the alignment of the entire structure.
Exactly. And the Arabic word here is Huwa, meaning he. This isn't just a grammatical starting point. It is an exclusive declaration.
Okay.
It immediately directs the human compass, both mentally and spiritually, toward the singular absolute source of all existence. It essentially shuts out the noise of competing forces.
So by isolating the subject right away, it's essentially shutting the door on any other possibilities. It sounds like it's trying to clear the board before the game even begins.
That is exactly what it's doing. It clears away all the secondary causes, the imaginary deities, and the illusion of random chaotic forces that humans have historically clung to.
Right.
By starting with he, Revelation establishes one central, unbreakable truth. The true active agent in the universe is the singular creator. Nothing else has independent power.
Wait, so this single word is what liberates the human mind from superstition?
Absolutely. Think deeply about ancient human history. When people didn't understand the rain, the sun, or the changing of the seasons, what did they do?
They attributed them to hidden spirits or gods.
Right. Temperamental warring gods. They spent their entire lives performing empty, inherited rituals, just trying to appease these unseen forces out of sheer terror.
Wow. Yeah.
The pronoun he completely destroys that ancient architecture of fear.
Because if there are multiple competing gods, or just blind, chaotic forces, the universe is inherently unpredictable.
Precisely.
You'd have the god of the ocean fighting the god of the wind, and humanity is just caught in the crossfire, hoping not to be collateral damage.
Exactly.
But you are saying that pointing to a singular he changes the actual mechanics of how we view nature.
Yeah, think of it this way. If you know a highly complex machine was designed by a single, brilliant master engineer, how do you expect its gears to turn?
You expect them to work together in a unified system.
Exactly. This singular pronoun is the absolute foundation of rigorous scientific thinking. If the creator is one, then the laws governing the cosmos must be consistent, unified, and harmonious.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It gives humanity the courage to study the universe without fearing that some unpredictable spirit will just, change the rules of physics tomorrow.
That fundamentally shifts the modern narrative. We are often told that faith and science are at odds. But this specific articulation of faith, the insistence on a singular rational creator, is the very thing that makes the scientific method possible.
It really is.
It gives you the green light to investigate reality. But let's look at what happens when humanity does investigate reality. If the creator meticulously designed the earth as a staging ground, what exactly was the nature of that action? Because the verse uses the word created. How does this differ from just making or producing something out of raw materials?
Okay, if I threw a bucket of paint at a canvas and it happened to form an interesting shape, is that the same as drafting a mathematical blueprint for a suspension bridge?
Not at all. One is a complete accident, a byproduct of chaos that might look pretty but has no function.
Right.
The other requires intense calculation, foresight, engineering, and deliberate intention.
And that exact distinction is what the Arabic root for created, which is kalaka, conveys. It doesn't merely mean bringing something into existence out of nothing. It carries the inherent meaning of precise measurement, flawless design, and assigning a specific, necessary function to that creation. It entirely negates the modern philosophical idea of nihilism, or like a blind accidental universe that just bumped into existence.
So it's the difference between a universe that just happened to fall together through random particle collisions and a universe that was meticulously engineered.
Exactly.
The great example of that is the James Webb Space Telescope. If the mirrors on that telescope are misaligned by a fraction of the width of a human hair, you don't get a picture of a distant galaxy. You get blurry, useless chaos.
Spot on.
So kalaka means the universe was engineered with those exact, unforgiving tolerances. But when you look at the sheer scale of the cosmos, the billions of galaxies, the endless void, it is so easy for a person to feel incredibly small. It can feel like a total accident. How does this verse address that terrifying feeling of insignificance?
Well, what happens to your sense of personal value? If you are invited to a massive, elaborate banquet, and upon walking in, you realize every single detail from the temperature of the room to the specific food on the table was prepared specifically before you arrived.
You instantly realize you aren't an intruder, you are the honored guest.
Exactly.
The whole setup revolves around your arrival, which gives you an immense sense of purpose and belonging.
And that is the philosophical revolution contained in the phrase, for you, or Lakum in Arabic. These three Arabic letters completely overturn the modern existential dread of being a cosmic accident.
Wow.
Revelation states that the Earth, with all its intricate biological and atmospheric systems, was prepared as a stage for human existence. You are not a parasite on this planet. The Earth is an open laboratory and a perfectly prepared table for you.
But I have to stop you there, because that exact mindset that the Earth is a giant playground, for us, is arguably the root cause of climate change, mass deforestation, and the pollution of our oceans.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, if we are told we are the absolute center of the universe and everything is for our taking, doesn't that just breed cosmic arrogance and environmental destruction?
Let me ask you this. If someone lends you a priceless vintage car and says, this is for you to use, does that mean you have the right to drive it into a brick wall or strip it for parts?
Of course not. It means I have the privilege of driving it, but I also have the immense responsibility of maintaining it. I'm accountable to the actual owner for the condition I leave it in.
Precisely. Reading the Qur'an holistically makes it clear that this stewardship is entirely conditional. It's anchored in justice and immense responsibility.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
You are entrusted with these resources to build a moral civilization, to discover their potential, and to maintain the delicate ecological balance the Creator established. The Earth is working for you, so you can work toward a higher moral purpose, not so you can destroy your own home out of greed.
That transitions perfectly to the scope of what we are entrusted with. Because if it's a conditional stewardship, we have to look at the absolute language used next. The verse says, all that is on the earth.
Right.
Does this really mean everything? Because let's be honest, there are things on this planet, viruses, deadly predators, extreme environments that seem completely contrary to human benefit. They actively try to kill us.
Well, if you look at a massive, complex engine, and you find a tiny, sharp gear that cuts you when you touch it improperly, do you assume the engineer put it there as a joke? Or do you assume you just don't understand its role in the greater mechanism yet?
You assume there's a purpose you're missing.
Exactly. The word Jamia'an, meaning all, confirms that absolutely nothing is created in vain. Every single element, no matter how harsh, is part of a deliberate ecosystem.
Hold on, even things we view as purely lethal, like venom or volcanic eruptions, are fundamentally designed for our ultimate benefit.
Yes. And this is where revelation demands a profound shift in our scientific and philosophical perspective. Harm and benefit are often completely relative to human ignorance.
How so?
For example, a snake's venom seems purely destructive, right? Until medical researchers study it and extract its proteins to create life-saving blood pressure medications, like ACE inhibitors.
Oh, wow.
Or a volcano seems like pure wrath until you realize it regulates atmospheric pressure and its ash creates the most fertile agricultural soil on the planet.
That is incredibly paradigm shifting. It means we can't just categorize nature into simplistic, childish boxes of good and bad.
Exactly. It rejects that completely.
It completely rejects absolute pessimism. I mean, we used to think mosquitoes were just pests, but now we know they are a foundational food source for migratory birds and fish, and they even pollinate certain plants. The system is entirely interconnected.
Exactly. It forces humanity into a state of relentless scientific research. If revelation tells you that all of it is for you, then when you encounter a deadly bacteria or a barren desert, your job isn't to just curse it or run away.
Right.
Your mandate is to study it, understand the natural laws governing it, and discover the hidden utility the Creator placed within it. Science becomes an act of uncovering hidden blessings.
So the act of putting things under a microscope or studying tectonic plates is actually a fulfillment of this verse. It is actively seeking the benefit that was promised.
It is.
But if the earth is so full of hidden utility and our job is to extract and study it, why not just stay focused here? Why does the verse immediately shift our gaze upward with the word then?
Well, what happens to the psychology of a person who only ever looks down at the dirt, focusing entirely on the things they can touch, extract, hoard, and own?
They become incredibly narrow-minded. They become entirely materialistic, thinking their immediate physical surroundings and their bank accounts are the only things that matter in all of existence. They lose all sense of perspective.
And that is the profound danger of earthly arrogance. The word then, or thumma in Arabic, acts as both a spatial and a logical elevation. After establishing your roots, your resources, and your authority on earth, revelation forcibly pulls you out of your tiny terrestrial shell. It forces you to look up at the infinite sweeping architecture of the cosmos, reminding you of the vastness of the Creator's domain and your own smallness within it.
It's the ultimate humbling mechanism. You realize you are the steward of the earth, but the earth is just a speck of dust in a magnificent, unimaginably vast theater. It cures the arrogance that comes with mastering the earth.
Absolutely.
And then the verse says he directed himself to the heaven. How should we understand that phrasing? It sounds almost physical.
Think about how a master sculptor approaches a block of raw marble. Does the sculptor just passively appear over time? Or is there a specific moment where the artist focuses their absolute will and intention toward shaping that specific stone?
There is a deliberate, focused intention. The artist steps up to the stone with a plan in mind. The action is entirely purposeful.
And the phrase Istawa directed himself captures that deliberate intention to organize the cosmos. It is crucial to strip this of any physical anthropomorphism.
Right, so no physical movement.
Exactly. We aren't talking about physical movement through space. It represents the absolute divine will turning toward primary chaotic matter to establish a precise, flawless system. The universe wasn't left to blind chance after an initial explosion. It was intentionally and purposefully governed.
It's the difference between an explosion in a junkyard that randomly pieces together a car and the deliberate construction of a skyscraper.
Perfect analogy.
Speaking of construction, the verse continues by using highly structural language, saying, he proportioned them. What does that structural language imply in a cosmic sense?
Well, if you are building a massive skyscraper, what happens if the load-bearing beams are off by even a fraction of an inch? Or if the tension in the elevator cables isn't perfectly balanced against the weight of the car?
The whole thing collapses. The forces of gravity and wind would tear it apart. It has to be mathematically perfect to stand, otherwise the very forces meant to hold it to the earth will crush it.
And that is the exact essence of the Arabic word used here. It implies geometric, aesthetic, and functional perfection. It means removing all flaws and perfectly balancing the invisible cosmic forces.
Like what kind of forces?
Think about the gravity keeping planets in their orbits, the expansion rate of the universe, or the strong nuclear force. If any of these were altered by a fraction or a percent, Stars couldn't form and the universe would collapse. It
Yeah.
is an intricate, proportioned dance.
It is fascinating how astrophysics constantly affirms that precarious balance. We're suspended in a perfectly proportioned web of forces, but the verse goes beyond just general perfection. It specifies a number 7 heavens.
Yes, it does.
How do we unpack that specific detail without falling into ancient, outdated models of the sky?
When you peel back an onion, or when you look at a cross-section of the Earth's crust, what do you see? You don't see one solid, uniform block of matter.
No, you see distinct, interconnected layers.
Right, each with its own unique properties, temperatures, and functions. The number 7 in Arabic rhetoric can denote vast multiplicity, or it can refer to literal distinct layers of organization.
And atmospheric science and astrophysics are continually revealing that layering, aren't they?
They absolutely are.
I mean, we used to think the sky was just an empty, uniform dome. Now we know about the troposphere where our weather happens, the stratosphere with the ozone layer, the mesosphere that burns up meteors. And beyond that, we are discovering layers of radiation, dark matter, and cosmic dimensions.
Precisely. And notice the pronoun used in the Arabic text, them, or hana. This subtle linguistic cue implies that the heavens were once a unified, singular entity before being proportioned and organized into these distinct layers and systems. It points to an organized complexity that emerged from a unified origin, aligning beautifully with our growing understanding of cosmic evolution and the structuring of the early universe.
It really paints a magnificent picture of a universe moving from a raw, singular state into a highly structured, layered masterpiece.
It really does.
But then, the verse makes a fascinating pivot. We go from the physics of the earth to the astrophysics of the heavens, and it concludes with, "And he is knowing of all things." It shifts from creation to epistemology. Why does the journey end with knowledge?
Could a person who knows absolutely nothing about aerodynamics, material science, thermodynamics, or meteorology design and build a functioning commercial airplane?
No, that would be impossible. You can't just guess your way into a Boeing 747. The sheer complexity of the machine demands an incredible depth of prior comprehensive knowledge.
That is the logical, inescapable conclusion the verse is driving you toward. You cannot flawlessly design the Earth's delicate, interlocking biological ecosystems and then seamlessly proportion the massive, terrifying physics of the cosmos without possessing perfect, all-encompassing knowledge.
Right.
The perfection of the physical creation is the absolute, tangible proof of the limitless knowledge of the Creator.
So the physical universe is basically the tangible evidence of his attribute as the all-knowing. You can't look at the result without acknowledging the mind behind it. But let's bring this down to earth. How does that realization that divine knowledge is the bedrock of physics and biology actually impact human laws, human morality, and our daily lives?
Okay, if a group of children break into a control room and try to write a new instruction manual for how to operate a nuclear reactor, completely ignoring the manual written by the nuclear engineers who built it, what is the inevitable result?
A catastrophic meltdown.
Yeah.
Because they are operating on extremely limited, flawed understanding while trying to manipulate a deeply complex, dangerous system. They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly. When humans try to legislate morality, economic systems, or societal norms in a way that directly clashes with the cosmic laws or the moral values of revelation, it is pure absurdity.
That makes sense.
It stems from the immense arrogance of a limited mind thinking it knows better than the all-knowing Creator. Divine knowledge isn't just an abstract theological concept. It is the ultimate objective reference point for how to navigate human life without causing a societal meltdown.
That brings up a tension that so many people feel today. If divine knowledge is the ultimate reference and the Qur'an is the manual, does that mean empirical science is somehow in conflict with faith? Are we supposed to just read scripture, ignore the laboratory, and reject empirical discovery?
If a brilliant author writes a sweeping, complex novel and later writes an autobiography explaining their personal history and their creative process, are those two books in conflict? Or do they perfectly complement each other to give you a full picture of the author?
They complement each other. One shows you the art, the execution, the beauty. The other explains the mind, the intention, and the rules of the artist. You need both to truly understand the work.
The universe is a visual, physical book, and the Quran is a written, recited book. Both bear the exact same divine signature. Empirical science is not a rebellion against faith. It is a practical, active response to God's will.
Oh, I love that phrasing.
It is the tool humans use to uncover the mechanics of the universe and witness the physical manifestation of his infinite knowledge. Revelation actively rejects passive, thoughtless rituals. It demands that you engage your mind to build a functional scientific civilization.
So a biologist looking through a microscope at cell division, or an astronomer analyzing light spectra from a distant star, is actually engaging in a profound act of spiritual observation, whether they realize it or not.
Absolutely.
If we pull all of these threads together, the earth made for us, the proportioned heavens, the absolute knowledge, what is the overarching worldview we are left with? How do we categorize this?
We can define it as the philosophy of cosmic stewardship, and it rests on three unbreakable pillars.
Okay, what are they?
First, responsible human centrality, the idea that the earth is for you to manage justly. Second, cosmic unity, recognizing that the earth and the heavens are fundamentally linked in one flawless system. And third, the absolute epistemological reference, understanding that divine knowledge is the compass guiding our stewardship.
Let's break those pillars down, because they seem to hold the answers to some of our deepest modern anxieties. How does that first pillar, human centrality, actually solve the existential crises we see today? Well, because we live in an era where people are more digitally connected than ever, yet feelings of isolation, depression, and meaninglessness are skyrocketing.
Imagine being dropped in the middle of a massive, dark ocean at midnight, with no land in sight, no compass, no life jacket, and no idea how you got there. How would you feel in that water?
Terrified, completely alienated. I would feel like a piece of wandering driftwood, just waiting to go under. It's a feeling of absolute helplessness.
That feeling is exactly how modern materialistic philosophy often frames human existence. We're taught that we are just wandering dust, a random accidental spark of biology on a meaningless rock spinning through a cold, uncaring void. But this verse fundamentally cures that cosmic alienation. It places a hand on your shoulder and says you are not an accident. This entire unimaginably vast universe was prepared, proportioned, and balanced specifically for you. It gives you an unshakable sense of belonging and ultimate worth.
Wait, if the earth is explicitly made for you, and the Arabic uses the plural, meaning all of humanity, doesn't that completely destroy the justification for colonialism, imperialism, or the hoarding of extreme wealth by a tiny elite?
Yes.
Because if it's for everyone, then claiming it's just for me is a violation of the design.
You have hit the exact socio-political nerve of this entire verse. It establishes absolute, undeniable human equality at a cosmic level. If the Creator says the earth and its resources are for all of humanity, then no single race, class, corporation, or nation has the cosmic right to monopolize those resources.
That is so powerful.
The extreme poverty, the manufactured famines, and the massive wealth disparity we see in the world today aren't natural phenomena. They are the direct, destructive results of humanity denying this fundamental principle of shared stewardship.
That is revolutionary. It frames artificial borders, exploitative labor practices, and corporate monopolies not just as political or economic issues, but as direct violations of a cosmic decree. The earth is a shared table, and hoarding the food while others starve is a spiritual crime.
Exactly.
What about the second and third pillars you mentioned, cosmic unity and the limits of the human mind?
Think about how the water cycle works. The sun in the sky evaporates the water on Earth, creating clouds that are carried by the wind, which then water the soil to grow the food you eat.
Right, it's all connected.
There is no isolation. The cosmos works in a state of unified, interdependent harmony. Human society is meant to mirror that. We cannot survive if we isolate ourselves into warring factions or exploit one part of the globe to enrich another. We must integrate with justice and mercy, mimicking the physical harmony of the universe.
And the limits of the mind. Because humans have achieved incredible things. We've split the atom, we've mapped the human genome, we've put rovers on Mars. It's very tempting to look at our technological progress and think our minds have no limits at all.
It is exactly when we achieve great things that our limits become most dangerous. A human mind can invent the internal combustion engine, which is brilliant, but it fails to foresee the long-term devastation of climate change. We invent microplastics for convenience, and decades later, we end up choking our oceans and poisoning our own bloodstream. Our intellect is brilliant, but it is bounded by time and space. We cannot see the absolute end result of our actions.
We only see the short-term benefit.
That is why the third pillar, divine knowledge, is critical. It acts as the guardrail. It safeguards us from our own short-sightedness and prevents our brilliance from leading to self-destruction.
That makes perfect sense. We have the horsepower to build incredible things, but we desperately need the steering wheel that only divine oversight can provide. Otherwise, we just drive the car off the cliff faster. I want to look closely at the rhetorical flow of the verse because it takes us on a very specific journey. It goes from the specific for you to the general all on earth, then leaps to the cosmic, the heavens, and finally lands on the absolute all-knowing. Why does the verse talk about the earth before it talks about heaven? From a hierarchical standpoint, wouldn't you start with the heavens?
If you want to show someone gratitude
Mhm.
and you hand them a beautiful, intricately wrapped gift, do you immediately point out a star 5 light years away? Or do you start by talking about the gift you just placed in their hands?
You start with what's right in front of them. The immediate, tangible thing they can feel, touch, and experience right now. You ground them in the present reality.
Exactly. The psychological context of this chapter is recognizing blessings and establishing faith. It starts with the immediate human environment, the ground you walk on, the food you eat, the air you breathe. It anchors you in profound gratitude for the tangible world. Once that gratitude is established, it elevates your mind to the staggering, abstract realities of the broader cosmos. It's a flawless pedagogical progression. It teaches you to appreciate the seed before you try to comprehend the galaxy.
It walks you step by step from the dirt beneath your feet to the divine reality governing it all. But since we are discussing the layers of heaven, the ecological balance of the earth, and the physics of the cosmos, there is a massive temptation here.
Oh, I know what you're going to ask.
Should we be reading the Quran as a science book? Should we be trying to match every single verse to the latest article in a quantum physics journal?
If you use a deep philosophical treatise as a literal recipe book to bake a cake, you're going to end up with a terrible meal and a completely misunderstood philosophy.
Right, wrong tool for the job.
We must be incredibly careful here. The Qur'an is a book of guidance designed to correct the human moral trajectory and establish absolute universal truths. It is not a textbook of granular empirical science meant to teach you the periodic table.
Because science is constantly evolving, right?
Mm.
What was considered absolute, undeniable scientific fact 100 years ago, like a static universe, is viewed as primitive today. Science is a process of being less wrong over time.
Precisely. If you force the eternal, unchanging words of revelation to perfectly match the fragile, ever-changing theories of modern science, what happens when that scientific theory is disproven tomorrow?
You artificially weaken the revelation.
Tie the eternal to the temporary. The Quran gives us the overarching truths that the universe is structured, that it has a beginning, that it is perfectly proportioned by an all-knowing creator, that life comes from water. It leaves the granular details, the mathematical equations, and the biological classifications to human scientific inquiry.
It provides the indestructible framework of reality and leaves us the joy, the challenge, and the responsibility of filling in the scientific details through our own hard work. Let's circle back to that powerful word all, or Jamia'an.
Okay.
How does the idea that everything on Earth is created for us impact our daily choices, or the rules societies create for themselves?
What happens in a society where a small group of people claim they alone know what is pure, and they start arbitrarily outlawing natural resources, certain foods, or scientific advancement based on their own superstitions or desire for control?
It paralyzes the society. People become fearful, innovation completely stops, and the society gets trapped in a cage of artificial rules. The leaders use those prohibitions to maintain power over the masses.
The word Jamia'an shatters the authority of those who invent false religious prohibitions or try to gatekeep the Earth's resources. The default state of the world, established by this verse, is permission.
Okay, that's a big shift.
Everything is permitted and designed for human utility, unless revelation explicitly states it is harmful. True asceticism in the Quranic worldview isn't fleeing to a cave, wearing rags, and refusing to touch the world. True asceticism is engaging with the world, extracting its wealth, and managing it with absolute justice, charity, and humility.
That completely redefines piety. It means a scientist developing a new drought-resistant agricultural technique to feed the poor isn't just doing a secular job. They are engaging in a deeply spiritual act of utilizing what was created for us.
Exactly.
And earlier you mentioned that God proportioned the heavens with geometric perfection. How does that cosmic reality connect to our own human work ethic on a Tuesday morning?
Well, if you know that the creator of the universe operates with absolute mastery, precision, and flawless execution, a concept called itqan in Arabic, how should you, as the representative and steward of that creator, perform your daily tasks?
You shouldn't be sloppy. If the universe is built on extreme precision, my work should reflect that same dedication to quality. I am supposed to mirror that perfection.
Exactly. It is a cosmic call for human mastery. Just as the heavens are flawlessly designed based on comprehensive knowledge, human societies cannot be built on ignorance, corruption, or blind imitation of the past.
So it's about striving for excellence.
So when you sit down at your laptop to write a line of code, or when you are framing a house, doing sloppy work isn't just a bad business practice, it's a violation of the cosmic standard. Our politics, our industries, our architecture, and our educational systems must be built on meticulous science and a commitment to excellence. We're called to emulate that divine attribute of perfection in our limited human capacity.
That raises the stakes of absolutely everything we do. From sweeping a floor to writing legislation, it all falls under the mandate of ITCON.
It really does.
As we begin to wrap up the core of this discussion, I want to ask about the psychological impact of internalizing all of this, because despite all this perfection, the natural world can still be terrifying. Tsunamis, earthquakes, hurricanes, they show us how fragile we are. How does this verse change our psychological response to that terrifying power?
When you hear a loud, roaring engine in a pitch-black room and you don't know what it is, you're terrified. You think it's a monster. But when you turn on the light and realize it is just a heavy-duty generator providing life-saving power to a hospital, the fear transforms into respect and understanding.
The context removes the panic. You realize the raw power has a purpose, even if it's intimidating.
This verse cures the paralyzing anxiety we feel about the future and the raw forces of nature. It teaches us that natural disasters are not the blind, chaotic wrath of a universe out to destroy us. They are precise cosmic laws in motion.
Right.
They have massive ecological functions, like renewing the Earth's crust, releasing pressure, or balancing the atmosphere. More importantly, they serve as powerful moral catalysts. They remind humans of their fragility, urging them to correct their moral path, to stop exploiting the Earth, and to develop better scientific, structural, and social protections for the vulnerable.
It turns a disaster from a reason to despair into a catalyst for scientific growth, communal solidarity, and moral reflection. It's incredible how analyzing the internal wording of Revelation, just focusing on the pronouns, the verbs, the sequence, yields so much more practical daily value than getting lost in abstract, external theological debates.
I completely agree. When you strip away the historical arguments and simply listen to the precise cadence of the words, the verse transforms. It is no longer just a description of the ancient past. It becomes an ongoing, living constitution.
Your living constitution.
Yeah, it continuously regulates your relationship with the Creator, it defines your ecological responsibility to the Earth, and it contextualizes your place within the awe-inspiring architecture of the universe.
I really appreciate you walking us through the mechanics of this. It completely shifts how you view the dirt beneath your feet, the sky above your head, and the work you do with your own two hands.
It's my pleasure.
To summarize our journey today, we learned that the universe isn't a random accident, but a precisely measured, intelligently designed home built specifically for humanity. We saw how true faith requires active scientific exploration to uncover hidden utility, not passive retreat from the world. We discovered that the Earth's resources are a shared gift, demanding absolute human equality and responsible conditional stewardship under the guidance of divine knowledge. And finally, we saw how the flawless proportion of the heavens demands excellence and precision in our own daily work.
Perfectly said.
As we close, I want to leave you with this question. If the entirety of the earth and the heavens were proportioned and perfected to support your existence, what level of perfection and purpose are you bringing to the work you leave behind on this earth?
That's a powerful thought to end on.
That's it for this episode of Insights. If you found this reflection helpful, follow the show and join us next time as we continue verse by verse in the Qur'an. Until then, take one idea from this verse into your day.